So, tag time. Is it Tuesday? No, it's probably not Tuesday when I'm posting this. It might be Thursday, but it's probably Friday or Saturday. So, the L tag. What is it? Why is it called the L tag? Well, it probably has something to do with the letter L, I would imagine. Let's find out together, shall we? Hello, I'm Pete. This is the Ponderings of Pete. And I make that altogether way more grand than it sounds. I'm a booktuber that talks about fantasy and sci-fi and some historical fiction and some other stuff. Historical nonfiction now, I guess, with the Communist Manifesto. Bunch of random stuff. Not horror, sadly, but a lot of stuff. And I was tagged in a tag video by Klaus at the Contradictorian. This guy. So I'm going to do this tag. So, the first question is L is for Louis de l'Amour. It's probably just Louis L'Amour because he's American. But he is the best-selling author famous for his Western fiction. What is your favorite L'Amour novel? I'm being too altogether fancy for an American name. But I don't have one. I've never heard of him until I looked him up before I did this tag. I haven't read any of his work. Maybe I will. I don't know. We'll see. If the thrift shop wields it. The next question, L is for love. What is your favorite literary love story? Technically, with the word literary, it can just be any book, right? That has a love story in it, right? No, I don't think that's actually what this question is asking. I think it's using the pretentious version of literary. And if we're talking that, I would say probably Emma, as that's my favorite Jane Austen novel that I have read so far out of the two that I have read. I think she counts as literary fiction, right? Probably. I liked Emma. Mostly I like Mr. Knightley. I think he's a stand-up dude. If you want a stand-up for a decent dude, go look at him. He's kind, he's considerate, he's stands up for people that need standing up for. So, check him out. Question 3. L is for like. Like this video. Shameless self-promo. Like this video. Subscribe. Hit that bell notification. Yay! L is also for language. Do I have any books in a language that I can't read? Do I read any other languages besides my language of choice? I'll answer the last half first. No, I am really don't. I just have one language and I shouldn't. I've had plenty of opportunity to learn other languages, and I just haven't, which is kind of bad. The exception to the other one is I randomly have a book. I think it's in German. It's probably in German. I bought another book on like eBay or something. To be specific, I bought this book, which is Gargantua and Pantagruel. They're basically they look like kind of fairy tale-esque books. This is like 5 books in one, translated from French. So I bought this because it was cool. It was on eBay. It looked older. It actually smells really nice. And as a bonus, the guy also sent me this random book in German that I can't read. First of all, it's kind of like, I'm buying a book from you that's English. And it's translated from French. If he sent me a French book, I could understand that he thinks that maybe I do know French as well. I don't know. But German just seems a little random. So it's probably a random book. But anyways, this is I should probably show you the title. That's probably the most useful. Oh, I found words I recognize. Israel and Jerusalem. I wonder what it's about. Klaus? German? Someone? Can you tell me what this says? Thank you. The other thing I could probably do is go on Google Translate, which, I might actually go on Google Translate.
Hi, Editing Pete here. Because I got curious, because I was taunting myself to go Google this book, I looked it up, and it might be Dutch. Actually, not German, because I suck at languages. Yeah, it's called The Treasure of Faith. It looks like a Christian book, which is interesting. I got a random book called The Treasure of Faith that's either in German or Dutch, but it's more likely it's Dutch.
Next question. L is for lingo. Are there any other words in languages that don't have English equivalents? To this, I will say, 1, I don't know any other languages. 2, I mean, well, actually, one of my favorite French words, which is this, means call of the void. That's probably just a cool, fun French word. It literally means that moment, like whenever you're driving on like a road and you see a cliff and you get the urge to jump off. That's the call of the void, disregarding death. So yeah, that's that instinct. Weird as it is, there's no English equivalent technically, because call of the void isn't a feeling that we acknowledge as a thing. Because English is crap. It's crap. The other thing I can say for this is I read a lot of fantasy, and technically, there's a lot of words in fantasy books that don't have English equivalents because they're not English words. Specifically, we could talk about Stormlight. That's actually something that Sanderson thinks about in his books of like, okay, technically, these are translations, so words that don't have English equivalents are just the words that were given for them. That's why we can't translate Roshar. It's a name. But yeah, it's just interesting. Next up, L is for literary fiction. What is your understanding of the term literary fiction? So, literary fiction to me stands for kind of pretentiousness, which is kind of bad. It just means I don't have a good understanding of it, in my opinion. If I were to try to define literary fiction, I would say literary fiction is any book above a certain age that is not good enough to be called a classic, but is also fictional. And technically, classics would fall into the category of literary fiction, but you could also not. So that's a very brief summation of what I think it is. I'm wrong, probably. If you have a better definition for literary fiction, let me know. The next one is L is for Lolita. And the question is, have you read the book? And what are your thoughts? If not, do you intend to read it? The answer is no and no. This is another thing I looked up before I looked, and no, I don't feel like putting that in my mind. It's weird. Don't look it up. It's technically, I don't know what it was even written, but it's just a weird book. The next question. L is for London. What's your favorite book set in London? And I think the first one that comes to mind is Darker Shade of Magic. That was a decent book. Other ones, I have 27 million Arthur retellions stuck in my head. I can't ever tell the difference between them unless they're specific ones, like the one that talks about Merlin's dad and mom first. Even then, I don't remember the title of it. But several of them take place at least partly in London, so I would say Arthurian Retellings is probably my favorite book based in London. I think there's another book that I'm trying to remember. It's a Neil Gaiman book that's set under the streets of London, I believe. Where are you? Neverwhere. It's Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. Thank you, bookshelf. That one's a good one. I think that's the one of two books by him that I've actually read. Next one is L is for libraries. Librarian. Who is your favorite librarian? I actually don't go to the library much nowadays, which is kind of bad. It would be helpful if I did, but I don't, because I've recently acquired a lot of books and I'm trying to get through those kind of first. So, my favorite librarian would probably be the one that we had at our library growing up. My brother and I were very avid readers, and we went to our local library at least once a week and would come back with a stack of books. We were the kids that our parents were like, you can't take 20 books home, you have to take 10. And we'd read them all. And it was great. And our librarian was amazing. It was so sad when she retired, and then we moved as well and we stopped coming. So it's we lost touch. So yeah, librarians are amazing. Support your local libraries if you can. They're just as important to this whole book ecosystem. The last question, incidentally, is L is for last. What was the last book that you read? And to that I will say Price of Spring by Daniel Abraham. I finished it, guys. I finished the Long Price Quartet. It was awesome. 4 books of amazingness. Just go read the Long Price Quartet. It's really, really good. And it's very politically based, economically based a little bit. He masterfully interweaves the magic system with imbalances of power, with responses to that. Just the resolution was actually very surprising, especially considering the endings of the last, well, not necessarily the endings of the last 3 books, but the endings of at least 2 of them. I really liked this series. It is one of my favorite series, and I will try to get everybody to read it because everybody should read it because it is so good. Without further ado, that is all. So I must bid you a good night because it is time to sleep. Well, it's actually time for me to edit, but it's time for you to rest. Like you should. Get some rest. It's important.